Alright guys, so I'm almost done. This is the last thing to go over. It's also the most complicated. This is definitely the most mechanically in-depth fight to come out of Classic so far. So let's just jump right into it. Cthulhu. I'm going to go over his abilities first because he has a ton of them, and it's just good to know each and every ability. The first one is I-Beam. Every 3 seconds, Cthulhu is going to shoot a green laser at a randomly targeted person in the raid, and it deals approximately 2,600 to 3,300 nature damage. If you're within 10 yards of that player that gets targeted, the damage doubles. Then it triples, and then it becomes infinite. If it hits more than 2 players, it's unhealable. So that third player is just going to instantly die. You can survive that second beam if you have decent stam and you're at full HP. And you have a greater nature res pot, or you're flasked, or but that third beam, you're done. You're dead. There's no way you can live through it, okay? His second ability in phase 1 is called Dark Glare. He's going to target a random raid member, and then he's going to channel up this giant red beam, right? You have a good amount of time to recognize that he's doing it. It's very obvious. We'll call it in voice. Basically, when he does that, you need to immediately ready to rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise accordingly. He does it 180 degrees before it stops. So essentially, you are on the opposite side of where you started. So if you're north, you're south. If you're southwest, you're going to be northeast. Etc. If you do get hit by the beam, it does around 50,000 damage and you die instantly. So it's just, you can't get hit by this. It takes around 35 seconds for the beam to rotate 180 degrees, and the next Dark Glare will begin 45 seconds after. Alright, so now this is the nitty gritty of phase 1. This is where we're going to be splitting DPS and stuff. They are the eye tentacles. These need to die first. So every 45 seconds, 8 eye tentacles spawn around the black circle surrounding the Eye of Cthulhu. So eight little eye tentacles. There's 8 groups. That means each group needs to focus down their eye tentacle, right? These can knock back and deal damage to players that were standing on their spawn point. They will immediately begin to mind flay random targets, dealing 750 shadow damage per second. They can be stunned, interrupted by a lot of things. So death coil, kidney shot, gouge, I think. If you got a CC, use it. I think they can be CS. I think they can be, you need to stop the mind flay immediately, as soon as possible. But to finish that off, they have 2,300 HP. So, they don't have too much. As long as we manage these adds, this fight is pretty straightforward, okay? So every 5 to 10 seconds, claw tentacles spawn under random players throughout phase 1, I should say. When they spawn, they'll deal approximately 1,500 damage to the player, also knocking them back. So be careful if you get knocked up during Dark Glare, because these will happen during Dark Glare. You do not want to be knocked back into the Dark Glare I-Beam, okay? So just be aware, always be aware of that Dark Glare beam, because if you get knocked up into that, you're just fucking dead. So you gotta, position yourself during the Dark Glare to be, anticipate potentially getting hit by a tentacle. On top of that, when you get knocked up, you get hamstrung, so your movement speed is lowered. And you guys will see that, when I show you the footage of me going in there. Each claw tentacle has 1,500 health, so they die pretty fast. Let's move on to the pull and our group positioning. This is the diagram that we're going to be going off of. There's going to be 8 different groups, 2 melee, 2 ranged, and 1 healer, okay? Each melee is going to be marked with one of these symbols, and that is going to be the group leader. So just, use that as reference for where you need to be, as well as the columns along the perimeter of the room that are shown on the diagram, those gray circles with the numbers 1 through 6 on right and left. All right, so that's going to be the grouping. You'll know your group. The thing about the grouping for this fight is if you don't know where exactly you need to be, that could be potentially a wipe, and probably actually will be a wipe, because every single person in the raid needs to know exactly where they're going to be, because if you don't and an I-beam goes out, that could potentially kill 10 plus people. With that being said, I'm going to show you guys how we need to designate the groups and who's going to be pulling on whatnot. So Groups 8, 7, 6, and 5 are going to stay on the right side of the entrance to Cthulhu's room. Groups 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to go and hug that left wall and go on the left side to Cthulhu's room, and then we're going to be split. Once the groups are on either side and we're ready to go, offense is going to be the first person to enter the room, and groups 1, 2, 3, and 8, 7, and 6 are going to wait for him to hit the bottom of the stairs before we all go in, before those 6 groups go in, okay? So once he hits the bottom of the stairs, that's when 1, 2, 3, 8, 7, 6 go in, and 4 and 5 are going to wait until those 6 groups hit the bottom of the stairs, okay? Once 1, 2, 3, 8, 7, 6 hit the bottom of the stairs, that's when 4 and 5 hit the bottom of the stairs to get in position, because they're the closest to the entrance and require the least amount of movement to get there, okay? With offense being in the front, he will take 2 I-beams for sure, 3 if we're lucky, and the 4th one will most definitely be on a random raid member, okay? Essentially, we get 6 to 8 seconds to get into position. So with that being said, we have running lines that we need to take, okay? So the melee needs to take this inside purple running line that I have shown here. The ranged needs to take the middle running line, okay? If you get targeted, so every single person needs to be targeted onto Cthulhu to see who he is going to target with his next nature beam while you're running into position. So once you're in position and you're safe and away from people, you don't need to necessarily be targeted on them. Maybe stay targeted on them for 5 seconds, but you're gonna need to start healing shit and DPSing and whatever, okay? While you're running though and getting to that position, every single person needs to be targeted on Cthulhu. While you're running, let's say you're group 2 and you get targeted while you're still running through group 3's area. What you're gonna do is you're going to run all the way to the left, okay? To the pillars, away from everybody. Let the beam hit you, and then immediately go to your spot where you need to be in group 2. You know, just to explain it so there's no confusion, if you are in group 7, or you're running in group 6's area, but you still need to get to 7, you immediately go to the right, hard right, away from everybody, get hit by that I-beam, and then move to your spot, okay? So ideally, we will have 1 I-beam go off on somebody who isn't in position yet. I think we can get to a point where we can move so fast that nobody gets hit by an I-beam while they're running to their position, but that probably won't be for a while. Ideally, after that first I-beam hits somebody who's running in position, that next I-beam, we're all already in place. You get me? So like we're all already in place, so it's like there's that mechanic doesn't even matter at that point, okay? All right, so once the fight starts, all DPS need to focus on nuking the eye and popping CDs as soon as possible. For 45 seconds, there will only be those small tentacles that randomly pop up and knock people back. They have 1500 HP. Those need to be focused by ranged DPS. Melee, stay on the eye. So after the first 45 seconds, Cthulhu's going to spawn those 8 small eye tentacles that mind flay everybody. All melee needs to immediately focus those, CC those, pummel, kick, gouge, do whatever you need to do to CC those and make them stop mind flaying and start focusing on killing them. After you kill those, melee can focus back on the eye. So when Dark Glare is casting, the group in its line of fire needs to either move to the left or right as soon as possible. The raid will then move either clockwise or counterclockwise around the room to take up alternate positions, okay? For clarification on positions, okay? It's like a mirror. So you're gonna go to exactly the opposite of where you were. So if you're originally in group 1, you're gonna be rotating to the other green. So group 5, and group 5 is gonna be group 1. It's just the opposite of where you started. So 2 is gonna be at 6, and 6 is gonna be at 2. Easy enough, right? It's 180 degrees, okay? So you're just gonna be completely flip-flopped of where you were. Very simple. So the tricky part with the eye tentacles is the first time that they spawn, that's when the first Dark Glare spawns as well. Obviously, if you're in a safe enough spot to nuke down, this is referring to melee, if you're in a safe enough spot to nuke down those, definitely nuke your little eye tentacle down. But if you're in any risky area of getting hit by Dark Glare, do not chance it at all. And this goes for ranged and melee DPS. if your little eye tentacle is dead and you see a ranged, struggling to kill something, help the ranged with the regular tentacles that are spawning that they need to focus on, okay? And conversely, ranged DPS, if you see a melee who, and your tentacle is dead, if you see a melee killing a little eye tentacle and you're not, all you need to do is run away, cast a shadow bolt or, whatever fire mages cast. The first phase is pretty much that. Hopefully we can get it down in 3 dark glares, but I'm reading that 4 is normal as well, which is completely fine. I would like to shoot for 3. I think we have the damage to do 3. As soon as the eye is dead, we have 15 seconds to get in position for phase 2. So what that means is everybody's gonna loosely group up at the back of the room. So that's the opposite of the entrance. That's where group 1 and 8 will be standing. We're gonna all group up there because a giant tentacle will spawn underneath somebody, but we want to loosely stack. That way, not too many people get hit by the knock up, right? We have to be grouped up for it to get put in a good spot so we can zerg this thing down. But at the same time, we don't want to take too much damage from this thing. So, phase 2, Cthulhu has a damage reduction on him. He'll take 99% less damage from all abilities until he is weakened, okay? So, that giant claw tentacle I was telling you about that spawns underneath somebody, that we all need to be loosely grouped up for at the back of the room, where groups 1 and 8 are. That thing has 90,000 HP. Anyone near the area will get knocked away and take 3,000 to 4,000 physical damage. If no one is in melee range, they will burrow after a few seconds and re-emerge at full HP. So we really don't want to lose that thing. We don't want to fucking deal with that thing again, okay? It's actually almost a wipe when those things do burrow back down. So we got to take care of those. They hit for around 2,000 damage and have a thrash ability just like the Drakes and BWL. So tanks really need to be topped off for these. They hit really fucking hard. They spawn every 60 seconds or 30 seconds after/before a giant eye tentacle spawns. Giant eye tentacle, just like the little ones that mine flay, except this one has 36,000 HP. It spawns underneath a random person, just like all of them. Anyone near the area will be knocked back and take 3,000 to 4,000 damage, just like a lot of them. They will continuously attempt to cast I-Beam, similar to the Cthulhu I-Beam in phase 1, right? Except this one can be interrupted by a lot of things. So it can be death coiled, it can be feared, it can be stunned. So warlocks are going to be needing to focus on death coiling those as soon as they come up and then locking those down. It is essential to interrupt every single I-beam that they cast. If one of those goes off, it is not good. It could be a potential wipe. So interrupts need to be on point. People need to focus interrupts, okay? Just like in phase 1, the small eye tentacles will spawn, 8 of them, in the same spots, except instead of every 45 seconds, it's every 30 seconds. So melee really need to be on top of those. Once that's dead, once your small eye tentacle is dead, you need to focus on the big eye tentacles and then the other ones that are spawning. So in order of deadliest to least deadly, that means what we need to kill first to last is small eye tentacles, large eye tentacles, regular tentacles, and then if there's ever a giant tentacle with 90k HP and a giant eye tentacle up at the same time, just nuke down the giant eye tentacle first and then we all focus the giant tentacle, okay? So that's the kill order. Alright, so while all this is happening on the surface, there will be 2 other devouring tentacles, or whatever they're called, that will eat a random player every 10 seconds, and then it's brought into the stomach of Cthulhu, okay? So when you enter the room, you will get a stacking debuff called Digestive Acid. It does nature damage, and the debuff is applied every 4 seconds. And it is recommended to exit the room when you have between 5 to 7 debuffs. I've heard even up to 10. So if you feel like you're tanky enough, you can stay for 10, and that's to you ranged DPS, not melee or healers or tanks. I'll get to that in a second. Each application deals 150 nature damage every 3 seconds and is not mitigated by nature resist gear, okay? In this stomach room, there are 2 flesh tentacles, and they have 25,000 HP each. They will melee anyone in range, so that's why melee, it isn't ideal for them to stay down there. Once they're both killed, Cthulhu will then enter the weakened state for 45 seconds. So his weakened state makes him take full damage, and that's when you go ham, okay? To exit the stomach, you must move to the center of the back platform. Upon entering the room, players should move near the ejection platform and deal as much damage as they can to the tentacles before leaving the room. It's definitely best for range to stay down there. Rogues can evasion the tentacles. If they haven't had to use evasion already, it's good to use it down there, get some damage on the flesh tentacles. It's imperative that our whole raid team is communicating throughout this whole time, because we cannot kill these flesh tentacles and make Cthulhu in a weakened state while we have giant tentacles up. While the tentacles are low up top and then the tentacles are low at the bottom, we all have to communicate, okay? If we kill the flesh tentacles while we have giant tentacles up there, up top, it's not good, because we lose time and a whole bunch of damage. You know, it could be potentially a wipe if we kill the tentacles in the stomach at the wrong time. We really need to calculate and communicate when the correct time to kill those tentacles in the stomach is. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is the best time to kill the tentacles in the stomach is at the same time that we're killing the tentacles on the surface. So we need to communicate and kill both the ones in the stomach, or the one that is left up in the stomach, at the same time as the one up top. So the best time to nuke that one in the stomach is probably as soon as one of the giant eye tentacle spawns, okay? So when that eye tentacle spawns, we burn that down, and while we're burning that down, the person below burns the one down in the stomach, and then we essentially kill them at the same time. So then when we kill them at the same exact time, we get the max amount of value to fucking nuke Cthulhu, okay? Everybody focuses Cthulhu. Every single person focuses Cthulhu, okay? Even if there's just 2 or 3 little eye tentacles up, ignore those eye tentacles. Or as soon as Cthulhu is not weakened anymore, we have 10 seconds to regroup before that new giant tentacle spawns. So as soon as he gets unweakened, we clean up the tentacles that are still up, and then we loosely group back at where group 1 and 8 at the back of the room is. We kill that giant tentacle, and then we do that all over again, okay? It's recommended, and this is the blanketed thing that I've seen from every single guide, every single video, is that first time you kill those 2 flesh tentacles in the stomach and he becomes weakened, really try and go for 50% HP, because you don't want to have to do this 3 times. I'm sure it could be doable if healers have the mana, but 2 cycles of this phase, it's going to be very mana draining, okay? So just to clarify, the best time to kill the tentacles in the stomach is while the raid is killing or has just killed a giant eye tentacle. As soon as the giant eye tentacle is either need to line up while we're killing that tentacle, you guys below kill the tentacles below, kill them both at the same time, boom, we're fucking good to go. Let's fucking fuck them up, okay? Also, I forgot to mention this. When Cthulhu is in the weakened state, he turns purple, okay? So it'll be very obvious to everybody. And it is for 45 seconds. So we have 45 seconds to fucking nuke the shit out of him, okay? If there is a giant claw that's up when he is weakened, we'll have a tank on it, and everybody just focus on killing Cthulhu. Keep our tank healed while he has the giant claw, and then we'll clean it up. Anything that is still up from before we weakened him, we will need to clean up after we nuke the damage, okay? So just be prepared to immediately start cleaning things up after the weakened state is done, because we really need to focus on getting as much damage as we can while also keeping our tank alive, who is tanking, you know, the giant claw. Alright, so to rerun down this fight, okay? So we all, at the beginning of phase 2, we all group up at the back of the room where groups 1 and 8 are. When the first giant claw tentacle spawns, it'll be picked up by a tank, and then we burn it down. Melee need to position themselves near the body of Cthulhu to anticipate killing the small eye tentacles, which will be beginning to spawn at the same time as every giant tentacle hereafter. When the giant eye tentacles spawn, a tank needs to pick it up immediately, and a warlock should initially use Death Coil to prevent it from casting I-beam. Ranged DPS and tanks should be interrupting every cast and killing these as fast as possible. While this is happening, our melee are going to be moving around Cthulhu, interrupting and killing the small eye tentacles. Raid will continuously deal with alternating between giant tentacles and small eye tentacles every 30 seconds until Cthulhu is weakened. To finish everything off, here's some footnotes. It's ideal for the entire raid to be using full consumes as much as they can afford on every attempt for Cthulhu. No half-assing, no, saving your consumes for some other time, for parsing and BWL or something. No, this is where you use the consumes. This is where we fucking pull out all the stops every attempt until we don't have anything left. Also remember the small eye tentacles do also knock back, so try to avoid standing where they spawn. So that's you, melee. Movement speed enchants and swiftness of Zanza should be definitely used to increase mobility, as there's a lot of movement in this encounter. A great add-on for private servers, I don't know if there's one for retail, but there's a thing called Cthulhu Warner. It will notify you if you're standing too close to another player for phase 1. And with that is fucking Cthulhu, boys. That's it. That's all we need to do. Everybody knows the fight now. We can fucking do this. There's no more mystery. There's no more holy shit. There's so many mechanics to understand. We all understand what we need to do. Last thing, I just remembered. I don't know if I said this already, but I really want to try and rehearse our positioning at least once before we actually go and kill Cthulhu. So I'd really like to, on a raid day after BWL or something, I'd really like for us all to rehearse this, to rehearse our group positioning at least once. My girlfriend's coming in the room. That's it for me, boys. Let's fucking kill this boss. Let's do it. That's it.